Hello, guys, once again. Thank you for joining me once again on my podcast. Today, I want to talk about business as the ultimate form of money making. So, today, we're going to focus on why it is the ultimate form of money making, why business, how to do business, um, how to think about business, and everything we can talk about business. So, sometimes it's very easy to think that business is but in a way, I think that's the way it pans out in society, that it's either do or die, or like you either good at it or you're not. I think that's generally true, but I think if you think like that, it's very limiting a view of business. Why do I say it's a very limiting view of business? You see, business is ubiquitous. It appears in very many forms and in very many sizes and in very many ways. So you can have big, small, mid-sized businesses. You can have um, businesses that need physical assets, businesses that are fully virtual, businesses are, but the core thing about a business is it's an entity uh, that is there for making profit. So you provide value and you make money, but a core component is the money you put in should be uh, coming out more, or should the money you get out of it should be more than the money you put in, so that it makes sense. The profit aspect of the business is the most important aspect. So the reason why I want to talk about business as the ultimate form of money making, so let's think about it this way. First of all, size. um, the economies of scale and the law of large numbers generally work in business. You see, um, what you can do as a single entity, as an individual, a business can do and replicate in very many its effect. It can replicate it in very many ways. So I can have, let's talk about industrialization brought machines into everyday life. So businesses adopted industrialization and the use of machines into their systems and their processes, so that they can produce more goods and generally more value. So basically, just by doing that, businesses were able to reduce the costs dramatically. Businesses were able to reduce the time, and they were able to increase the efficiency with which they produce their goods. Another thing is the economies of scale. Basically, they can, because they can produce very more units at a very cheap cost. Um, they can make more profit from just that activity, just producing for cheaper than they sell it, and they sell much more expensively, so that they get a good margin. So um, business has very many advantages just because of size, just because of the tools that it uses. Uh, a business is an extension of what a human can do, but with leverage. Let's just say that. So a human can sell goods one for one, but they're limited by their time, their energy, and their capacity. But a business employs, a business deploys capital, a business um, creates value, a business makes money, a business is an essential component of an economy. So I've said a lot of things, but let's distill what we're trying to say today. So um, businesses are the single largest components of an economy, right? That means that their activities collectively form majorly, to a large extent, what happens in an economy, or to a large extent, they form the economy. Other components, you can say individual consumers, us, just individual people consuming and producing, but mostly consuming. Um, uh, Banks or financial players, so that is they provide the value of capital. You can talk about yeah, there's very many components, but businesses happen to be the most important components of an economy, because they provide value, they take in value, and they create and take in value. So because the single largest component of an economy that makes them um, the components that are most poised to take value from an economy or to receive value from an economy. When the economy grows, businesses are the first to receive that value or to receive that, to create and to actually receive that value because um, so businesses create, people consume, and people redistribute, or I can say people redirect resources back into production. So, and I think a major way uh, that money is redeployed is through businesses. So, yeah, businesses are like the most poised to receive value from an economy. Whatever happens in the economy, whenever an economy grows, businesses are the first to realize that. Financial uh, institutions will realize that too, but remember, their capital is usually being used in businesses. Their capital is usually being deployed in businesses, and yeah, so that's one of my most important components. I mean, my most important talking points. That businesses are the single largest component in the economy. Second component is businesses over millennia have made the wealthiest people one for one. Just there are many ways people have become wealthy, but businesses are generally the ways that most of those people have become wealthy. These people might have been involved in very many things, but being involved in business is one of the ways that most of these people are able to become very, very, very wealthy. Another thing is businesses offers something I'd like to call leverage. You can see leverage in many ways. You can talk about, most people when you talk about leverage think about financial leverage, but leave that for a moment. Let's just talk about leverage. Basically, leverage is having let's say 1 unit of input and 3 units of output, or a disproportionate amount of output relative to your inputs, or a larger effect with minimum effort. That is basically a way to see leverage. I can put a little amount of energy, and that energy realizes or brings about many more effects or a larger effect than the amount of input that I put. So businesses have this advantage. So think about it. I can just put capital in a business, organize activities in a certain way, and once these activities are channeled into something, these activities are organized and they produce and value comes into the company. This little activity of doing this has brought me more value than I put in. So in that way, you can say businesses have a lot of leverage. First, from their size, second, to from the coordination of the activities, and third, you can also say efficiency. There's many ways. Vertical integration. Businesses have the advantage of leverage. They have the advantage that a single human being cannot have. A single human being is limited by time and the effort they can give, but a business can do what a single individual can do many more times. One other way you can see it is from, first of all, the way they deploy capital, or the way they consume and produce. No, the way they mostly consume capital, because capital is being put into them and they deploy that capital into various uses to produce value. So one way to see that, how businesses have leverage, they take in capital from, let's say, a bank, and they multiply the value of that capital into many times if they are very efficient in using this capital. Second way is labor. If they have efficient labor management, or they have efficient labor units, that's the people working for the business, they can turn this labor into many more times value than the labor is putting in. So yeah, leverage is a key component of business and its effect, or its ability to create value and to make money. Finishing up, I want to talk about forms of participation in a business. So how do you get into business? Most people think about getting into business by starting a business, starting your own business from scratch. I think that's a very, very limited view of thinking about business, because not everyone has the time, ability, and capacity to do that. But that does not mean that you cannot participate in a business. If you understand business, you've ever heard of something called stakeholders, and there are very many stakeholders: the investors, shareholders, whatever, suppliers. There are very many stakeholders. Um, Businesses like have very many people who take part in the process and in the entity. So you don't have to start your own business. I can buy a business. Somebody has already built a business from scratch and put it into profitability, and maybe they're tired or they want to get out, or I can give them enough value for what they have produced. I can buy the business. Um, Somebody has a lot of business skill. They know how to do business, but they're very limited in sourcing, and uh, they're very limited when it comes to sourcing for capital. I can be very smart in sourcing for capital, but I'm not very good in sourcing, or doing business. I can help them with that. We can make a partnership, um, or I can fund them if I trust them. Of course, trust is a very important part in business. I can do that. Another way is I can invest, right? Uh, Whether it's public companies or it's private companies, I can invest private equity, whether it's venture cap, talk about it all, right? It's all forms of owning businesses. Um, and just generally look at how much those people make in terms of money. It's a lot of money. Um, so I can finance, I can partner with someone or co-own a business with someone. I can start my own business. I can fund a venture. My God, there's very many ways you can own a business. You don't need to generally start your own. You can buy, you can invest in one, you can um, merge with someone who has a better business than you. There's many things you can do with a business. So um, don't say that, oh, I don't know how to do a business. You can be good at one thing. So if you're good in finance, you're very well poised to doing business, because when you're good in finance, generally one thing you're good at is sourcing for capital or knowing how to manage and borrow capital. So you can help someone out with that part while they just do the business, right? So yeah, that is very much it. And I also want to talk about ownership. I always say that wealth comes from ownership. Okay, wealth comes from ownership, and you can ask, owning what? What do you own? A good answer to that is owning very many things, but one of them is businesses. You own your own businesses, or you own a part of a business that somebody else is creating or working on. As long as you own something and you have entitlement to the value or the profits, or the you have a control in the share of the value that the business is creating, then you have access to wealth in that way. And the more you own, the more value, or the more entitled you are to the value that a business or businesses are producing. So owning businesses, just owning, not even having your own, just owning, just owning a part fully, as long as you own something, I think is a very important consideration to make when it comes to your wealth journey. You want to make money, find how you own things, own real estate, own businesses, own units of production, own something that produces, own a productive resource, own land, own real estate, own whatever, own something. So with that, I want to finish and find how you can own a business, find how you can create a business, find how you can start a business. You don't have to go all new school. Most people think about business in the new school way, start a technology company. No, there's very many. You see, a business doesn't have to be, as long as it has value in the modern times. There's some things that have value irrespective of the time. things to do with food, things to do with healthcare, things to do with as long as it's things that humans need, core human needs, things that serve core human needs, they will always be in demand. So if you can service those, you are in business. So thank you for tuning in. See you next time. Thank you.